Hi everyone, my name's Ismée Williams. I am the young adult author of This Train is Being Held, which came out in February of this year. This is my second book, and it tells the story about two teens in New York City who fall in love on the New York City subway. Some people, after reading it, have said that it sounds a little bit like a retelling of West Side Story, which I guess it is. I didn't start out with that intention, but it sort of ended up that way, except both the characters are Latinx. So Alex is a Dominican American from Washington Heights who's a baseball prodigy, and his papi really wants him to go pro, but Alex maybe wants to be a poet. And Isa is an Upper East Side private school girl who wants nothing more than to be a professional ballerina, but her Havana-born mother thinks that that is an unacceptable career choice for a modern-day woman. And so these are two highly scheduled teens who end up meeting on the subway on their way to doing their, highly scheduled after-school activities of baseball practice and dance class. I should tell you where I am. That was one of the questions. We're in Connecticut. It is Labor Day weekend, and so I'm trying to be outside as much as possible because it's been extremely cold recently, and I feel that we're going to have an early fall and winter. So anyway, we're outside all together. Hopefully the noise from passing cars won't be too loud, and my kids are probably going to come rushing out screaming any moment. So let me get down to it. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the inspiration behind the book and sort of the theme of the book. So I knew I wanted to do a romance because I love romances. And, I live in New York City. I've been in New York City for the past 21 years now. And one of the things that I love about New York City is the diversity, this sort of idea that anybody can belong, that, I always felt growing up like I was like the nerdy girl. I was sort of like the outsider. I didn't feel like I had, I was definitely not the popular kid, and I always sort of felt out of place. And so New York was sort of always in the distance. And I grew up in Connecticut. New York was in the distance as sort of this like fantasy place where, anybody could go, and as long as you work hard and, and you want to be there, then you can be accepted there. So that's why I went to New York originally, and why my husband and I are raising our family there. And so one of the things that always captivated my sort of interest in the city is the subways, right? So I've taken so many subways over the years, and in fact I took that one train. That was my commute, the one train line. So a lot of this book happens on the one train, and I commuted on the one train from 96th Street all the way up to 168th for over 15 years. And so I know that line very well. And one of the things, and it's like most New Yorkers probably feel this, that, you have a love-hate relationship with the subway. You love it because it gets you where you need to go, usually faster and certainly cheaper than, taxi, definitely faster than the bus. But you sometimes hate it because, the air conditioner's off and it's the middle of summer and you're packed in there like sardines, and it's not always on time. Sometimes you get stuck on the train and you're kind of wondering, I'm going to be late, what's going on? But at the same time, what I always loved is people watching, and how there's always such a wide variety of people on the subway. It's sort of like a perfect slice of New York City where, you have the construction worker in their fluorescent vest is sitting next to a businessman in a suit going to work, and then there's a bunch of teenagers, and they're going to school, and they're chatting and talking and laughing, and just I always was fascinated by it. I would watch the people and sort of make little backstories, like, oh, I wonder who that person is. And so I thought that it would be a really neat place for a couple to meet, and especially a couple who wouldn't otherwise meet, because New York City has, it's not a small town. It has many different circles of communities and social lives. And so these are two teens who wouldn't otherwise meet. They're both Latinx, but they're very different. They have very different backgrounds of Latinx, different different cultural heritages, different expectations from their families. So that's sort of where the idea came, to have them meet on the subway and to have a lot of the romance sort of take place on the subway, because again, they're so highly scheduled. They don't have a lot of time for significant others, and they've never had time for significant others before. But these two, Isa and Alex, they just end up meeting on the train by serendipity. So, in terms of backstory of how I sort of plotted this, I'm definitely I'm like in between, like plotter and pantser. So what I did is I sat down and I thought of all of the really cool things that I've ever seen happen on a subway, and I wrote them all down. And I wrote them down on like index cards like these, and I have them color coded. And then I spread them out on the dining room table, and I selected the ones that, I thought were, the most interesting or the most translatable to the sort of the themes of the book and sort of like the plot of what was going to happen between Isa and Alex. And that's sort of how I incorporated them into the book, all the different scenes. And not all of them made it in there. I mean, I ended up writing like way too much, and we had to cut, which is kind of typical of the way I tend to write. I tend to overwrite and then go back and edit and cut stuff out that's not necessary. But one of my favorite scenes to write, or that I wrote, takes place on the subway, and it's not the first time they meet, it's the second time they meet, and it's Halloween. So if you've ever been in New York City during Halloween, you know how much of a trip it is, because people go all out. People of all ages and all backgrounds go all out, so you can see so many very interesting costumes and also behaviors. People really get into character. And so I wanted that to happen in the book on the subway, where everybody's sort of like going to parties or going somewhere, going to the parade, and they're all in the subway. And so you have this like massive influx of people coming and leaving the subway car, and they're all in these interesting costumes. And it's also this really cool scene from my point of view, because Isa does something that I would never in a million years think of doing. And basically, so Isa's best friend is much more daring than she is. Isa's very brave and very strong, but she's not super like, look at me, like I'm like the funny one. That's her best friend. And so her best friend basically goes and sees a guy on the train who she's like secretly been crushing on, and completely out of the blue just goes up and like kisses him. And so then it's up to Isa to sort of match it. And luckily, Alex is there. So I'm just going to read you, let's see how far I get, read to you this scene. All right, this happens on Monday, October 31st. Oh, and I should say that I did use a calendar to make sure that all the dates were accurate for a specific year. I won't tell you the year that it was, but I definitely did that. So that was in addition to my little like note cards like that. I had a bunch of calendar sheets printed out for every month, so that I could put the scenes in the correct days of the week matched with the dates. Okay, so this chapter is from Alex's point of view, and he's on the train going with his friends to a party. And what other things you need to know? Brian is his good friend, and Chiara is a girl who's crushing on Alex, but Alex is not that into her. I like your costume, Chiara nods at my uniform. She stands right up against me, even though there are empty seats. I shrug. Didn't have anything else. I almost said no to Brian when he told me I needed a costume. Halloween is for pretending. This uniform, that's the real me. Back at my place, Brian was sweating. He scratched at the collar of his skin-tight suit. The pads of one of his pecs had shifted. He looked like he had una teta. Por favor. He got down on his knees. I had to go, he said. He'd promised Julissa, and I had to wear a costume. Brakes squeal. Chiara pitches forward. I take her arm. Cuidado. She grabs onto my waist. There's more than just gracias in her smile. I step back. Hey, Black Panther, we taking the L or the M? I shout over the heads of a red-nosed clown and the Joker. We're not the only ones celebrating. Danny adjusts his Kylo Ren mask so he can see me. Brian's huddled into Jaleesa, talking real close. She's the only girl not showing stomach. She's dressed as Nakia, so everyone will know they're back together. Black Panther lifts a cotton stuffed shoulder. At least those pads are in the right place again. The M? I nod. This party better be worth it. I love these. Kiara touches the buttons of my shirt. They're the same as the Yankees, verdad? Her hands travel down like she's counting them. Behind her, Kylo Ren gives me a thumbs up. A 3 train pulls in across the platform. We should change to the express, but Black Panther is busy trailing his nose down Nakia's face. He kisses her jawline. Despacito. I almost holler it, but the train's getting too full to dodge fists. Jaleesa giggles. She leans into Brian. Guess we're staying on the local. There's a sharp clatter in the bark of a laugh. By the door, a tall, dark-haired girl pulls up a shorter one. The blonde must have tripped. She's got a hand clapped to her mouth. They've both got on tall-ass heels. And their dresses. Why, if Poppy were here, he'd be whistling. I'd have to pretend I didn't know him. Some guy dressed as an old Luke Skywalker stands to give them a seat. The short blonde waves him away. They must have been drinking or smoking. Their smiles are too big. The blonde whispers to her friend. The friend's gaze shifts to a guy sitting in the middle of the car. He's got a pile of papers in his lap, a pencil in his mouth, and another behind his ear. One hand holds up the sheets. He traces small U's in the air. Is he some weird genius character from a movie I've never seen? The shorter girl smooths down the black sequins of her dress. She says something that might be, wish me luck. She prowls toward the middle of the car. The friend shakes her head, hands clasped like she's praying. Her smooth dark hair moves against her cheek. My heartbeat checks, as if a batter slammed my pitch out of the park. I recognize those bright eyes and that look, part fear, part thrill. It's the girl from the subway, the dancer. She's wearing a wig. There's a whoosh of paper. Chrissy? The weird academic guy stares at the blonde. She's holding the sheet that was in his hand over her head. One of his pencils rolls down under the seats. She kisses him. She's so short she barely needs to bend down. Her arm is still up in the air, her hand gripping the paper. Her friend presses a fist to her mouth, hiding her grin. She did that before, on the subway with me. The blonde, Chrissy, pulls back. She gives the guy she kissed a little smile, like she's shy now or something. Wait, do they not? Ay, lo besó and he wasn't expecting it? The guy stands. His papers scatter across the train. He fixes his glasses. He sways a bit, then grabs onto the bar above him. His other hand takes the blonde's waist. He pulls her to him. He kisses her back. He's bent over, but her feet still leave the ground. Oh my. One old lady nudges another. And Elvis and some guy in a banana suit pick up the crumpled pages. Elvis is smirking at the kissing couple. That did not just happen. Kiara's arms cross in front of her. Did that Blanquita just accost that boy? Her eyes flick to me. She licks her lips. You seem to like it, I say. The pencil behind the guy's ear slides free and hits the floor. It rolls toward me. I stop it with my foot, then bend to pick it up. When I stand, the dancer is staring at me. I show her the pencil and give her a small nod. Excuse me, do you know her? Kiara swings around. She's standing way too close again. Kiara examines my face. She pivots. Oye, Jaleesa, you see that? These white girls are bugging, kissing strangers like it's some game. Jaleesa extricates herself from Black Panther's arms. ¿Qué? The doors open. A couple with blackened eyes and red slashes painted across their faces gets on. The academic guy goes around collecting his papers. Chrissy leads him to her friend. The girls are like yin and yang, a blonde with a black dress and a brunette in a silver one. The dancer glances at me. She looks away real fast. She nods at Chrissy, who's talking. I wish I could hear what she's saying. The girl smiles and nods again. She stops. Her face falls. She shakes her head, glances at me, and shakes her head again. The pink leaves her cheeks. She turns the color of the fallen papers. Chrissy puts a fist on her hips. She stomps the floor with her massive shoe. Isa, you promised. Isa. Her name is Isa. Isa's fingers fold together. She nods and swallows. Her gaze meets mine. She steps forward. Que no. Coño, no. The scream of wheels drowns Chiara's voice. Isa's walk is not a prowl, but it's purposeful. Her eyes stay on me. There's mostly thrill in them, just a little bit of fear. The train goes faster. The clanking rhythm matches the beating in my chest. Isa keeps coming. She doesn't even wobble on those tall-ass heels of hers. She stops in front of me. Her pupils shift, looking into one of my eyes and then the other. Flecks of gold dot the light brown of her irises. An escaped wisp of blonde crosses her temple. She doesn't smell of alcohol. She smells like the flowers that grow in Mommy's hometown, like plumeria and jasmine. I can't help but breathe it in. Hi, Chuck, she smiles. I don't have time to wonder about the name. She reaches for my face. She's taller in the shoes, but not tall enough. I meet her halfway. Her lips are warm and soft. I'm still holding the pencil. I slip it into my pocket. I take her elbow. My hand is behind her head. I crush her against me. Heat floods my chest. The doors are open. Passengers getting out bump us. I feel like I've been drinking. Isa's breathing hard. Her eyes are dark, black, eclipsing the gold. The fingers that were on my cheek are on my collar. She gives my chest a gentle pat. I want to grab her hand and keep it there. Sorry about that. She taps me once more. Thanks for being a sport. She pulls away. The fringe of her skirt is clumped together, showing almost her entire thigh. I want to fix it for her, but I don't know how. Your costume. She brings the back of her hand to her mouth, hiding another grin. I like it. Her chest rises as she inhales. Silver beads curve around her like water over pale sand. You look good as a baseball player. She walks to Chrissy. She teeters on her left heel twice, on her right heel 3 times. Chrissy jumps up and down. She's clapping. A clawed hand grabs my neck. Montro, what the hell was that? Kylo Ren gives me a fist bump. Que heavy. Seriously, who was she? Brian keeps looking from me to Isa, who's laughing with her friends. I shrug. I dig my hands into my pockets. My fingers close around the pencil. Jaleesa takes a napkin from her bag. Ven. She motions for me to bend down. She wipes my mouth. Red lipstick stains the tissue. Jaleesa whacks my side. You look like Alex Rodriguez. You play ball like Alex Rodriguez. Now you're acting like him too, huh? She puts an arm around Chiara. Chiara's bottom jaw juts out. She pulls her jacket closed over her sports bra. I trace the edges of the pencil in my pocket. I don't know Chiara. All we've done is talk. I don't have time for more than that. I glance back. Isa's long leg, the slope of her shoulder, the tilt of her chin as she sneaks a look at me. I press my thumb into the sharp point of the lead until it breaks. All right, I'm going to stop there. And I realized I made a mistake. I left out a line. I think like a bumblebee was flying by me. The perils of shooting video outside. But anyway, so yes, that was one of the first scenes that I wrote. Definitely the first like romantic scene that I wrote for the book. And so it has a special place in my heart. And again, I love that idea of Isa being so brave to just like go up to him and in the middle of the subway ride on Halloween with all these people around, including all of Alex's friends and you know, her friends supporting her. But anyway, so I'm curious, like, what's the most interesting subway thing that's ever happened to you guys? Let me know. You can find me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Ismée Williams. It's my handle. You can also find me on my website at ismaewilliams.com. You can buy my book. This Train is Being Held anywhere that books are sold. And the audiobook, I want to give a huge plug for the audiobook because they do such a great job, way better than me. I'm not an actress. I hate my speaking voice when I hear it recorded, but the actors who read Isa and Alex are just phenomenal. Fenomenal, as my abuelita would say. So anyway, thank you for tuning in and listening. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you guys.